Why were the Japanese extremely cruel to the inhabitants of the countries they invaded? If their plan was to have satellite states, why kill millions of civilians? Something that would obviously cause fierce resistance against the Japanese occupation. So it all begins with the Japanese, what they call the Meiji Restoration, which was the destruction of the dharmic roots of Japan. So Japan was a dharmic nation for almost 1500 years. The samurai were practitioners of Dharma. Today they are categorized as Buddhists, but many of the gods they worshipped were Hindu gods, right? And their way of life was called Bushido. That was the samurai way of life. That is, well, you could consider it to be something of a Japanese version of the Kshatriya or Rajput way of life, that sort of thing. It was all about honor. It was all about duty. It was all about being honorable and all that. The way a warrior should live and the way a warrior should die, that sort of thing. And the Meiji Restoration was all about destroying the samurai system, eradicating that, destroying, attempting to destroy, to eradicate Buddhism, Hinduism from Japanese culture. When that failed, they portrayed it as a foreign religion and so on. And the Meiji Restoration was about making Japan a clone of the Western nations, which are these immoral, barbaric, brutal nations that destroy and genocide entire civilizations. The Japanese said that, you know what, we should become like that. Otherwise, they will do that to us. So better us do to everybody else. So that's what was done. And then the Japanese military, it kind of perverted Bushido, the samurai way of life. Obviously, the samurai were destroyed, but their way of life was kind of perverted and twisted. So in Bushido, in the samurai way of life, you don't surrender. Surrender is shameful. So if you are captured alive, first of all, you should not be captured alive in a battle. But if you somehow get captured alive, you have the right to perform seppuku, harakiri, which means you end your life in this ritualistic manner. And by doing that, you restore, you regain your honor by, killing yourself. So in samurai culture, surrender was seen as the most shameful thing. You don't surrender. You die a good death in battle. Or if you're captured, your enemy who has captured you will give you the opportunity to commit seppuku and regain your honor. That was the samurai code. Even among enemies, there was honor. So surrendering was seen as shameful. So the Japanese military, after destroying the samurai way of life and the samurai, they perverted and twisted Bushido, saying that anybody who surrenders is shameful and doesn't deserve to live. And they applied that even to civilians. Now, how do you expect civilians to not surrender? Civilians aren't warriors, right? The samurais had Bushido, but only for the samurais. They never ever, just like in India, when the warriors fought, when two armies fought, they never touched the civilians, right? Even in Japan, you had the same thing. The samurai did not ever, when they fought a war, they did not go and harm civilians. But the Japanese army, after the Meiji Restoration, extended Bushido, that perverted, twisted Bushido, to say that anyone who surrenders is worthless, is dishonorable, and you can do whatever you want with them. The Japanese army's discipline was brutal, routine beatings and humiliation and all. So extending that to civilians they had subjugated was just natural and normal for them. So they were no longer dharmic. They had moved away from the original Bushido. They regarded any surrender as shameful and the people who surrendered as worthless. And they were they were technologically very powerful, which means that they were able to conquer many nations going westwards during the Second World War. Their plan was not to have satellite states. Their plan was to have subjugated territories. And whichever nations resisted fiercely, the Japanese got more frustrated. And eventually, when they won, they made no difference between civilians and soldiers, and they just did all kinds of nasty brutalities. So it was not like they wanted to have satellite states. It's what they wanted to have: subjugated states. And the more brutal you are, the more you can subjugate. Brutality will not cause fierce resistance. It will break the resistance. That was the logic of the Japanese, and so on. So the root cause is Japan moving away from Dharma, moving away from their own culture, their own moral and ethical values, and adopting the morality and ethics of the Western nations. That is the root cause of all the Japanese brutality that we saw in the after during the Second World War.